Welcome. We're gonna go through some stuff. Uh, so let's go ahead and get started, I guess. Let me just make sure I'll do these in a sequence, maybe. So welcome. Maybe I should take a minute and put us in a bigger context of what I'm even gonna be talking about. I'll do my best because I'm not sure what I'm going to be talking about, like in totality. I haven't really looked at these posts. They've just been sitting open since the last time that I couldn't complete them. But, let's get some currents. So generally, some of these currents going on, hopefully you're acquainted. I would recommend not starting here if you're not. Just is what it is. I don't really want to recap too much. Let's see what else we got. Just throw some currents here. So flowing from the location where the Ontong Java Nui complex was forming before it broke up, and then Hawaii as a sphere moved up to the region of the North Pole, which Alaska was, and then went underneath it as the Chukchi, I believe, plateau over here, to then go actually to the North Pole, and then Alaska swung out, leaving behind this, and actually was displaced by the process, while Hawaii went to basically here, and then moved over to be in like the nook where it was then shot out of like the slingshot opening of the North Pole as the Earth expanded to a new radius during the global flood. Okay, glad we're on the same page now. Okay. Surely we're on the same page, right? No, it was donut. It's a donut. It's an earth donut. Earth donut. I'll go over here for a second. So, some things going on. Currents going in here. That then was going to the Hudson Bay center, the nucleus, where an eddy was occurring. The largest eddy atop North America, and then another eddy was centered atop the Great Lakes. Further south, those interacted with one another and created boundaries over here. I believe the Great Lakes one actually extended out enough to create larger boundaries than I have given it credit for. Just based on the arc there, in this arc, like this one I'm confident is related to Hudson Bay. The actual arcing nature here has almost like a boundary of the eddy that it held within, so it kept it as like part of that area based on its actual boundary of the eddy, though. But then it brought material up here, and then a current was flowing generally across here that led to a boundary current going here, and as well as current going around this way and like literally wrapping around and bouncing off of resistance once the Rangelia terrain docked as part of the insular super terrain, which also is up here. So then it got like smeared out along this side by this flowing current, while this other current went down here and crossed over, and then there's this other current flowing up over here. There's pressures over here holding all these currents in this region, and then there's pressure also over here from the Great Lakes, and then also currents flowing westward from Africa that are in Europe that are cutting across south of the Appalachians, more so than at the Appalachians. In that range, they actually block some of the flow, it seems. But a portion was flowing this way. Okay, so these are just generally currents that then were happening, leading to some things we've talked about. an eddy at the Colorado Plateau here, an eddy around a bunch of eddies here, really. Several eddies, moving eddies, not just the same position eddies. So these currents were flowing across North America as well as between North and South America, but then the currents were flowing this way to then interact and go down this way. And also, my thought is a ramp below lower currents and literally do something like that where then the ramp that it forms takes its shape of an arc as this current goes across this way and then ramps over the westward propagating currents generally that were off of Africa and into South America and between North America and South America, so that across this whole stretch it just is like branching in kind of like the shallogram we looked at yesterday. LaSalle would recommend the one that interlocks and goes from both directions. LaSalle would recommend the shallogram zone, episode 15. Some really good shallograms in there. I didn't actually really use my microscope. It was just some images I've been kind of looking at. But so these are the currents, some other aspects of the currents. Interestingly, this eddy here, Acapulco, I forgot. Place that just had the other hurricane, or Hurricane John. While Helene went this way and got like all the media coverage that I saw. Once I tried to find out what happened to this storm over here that I had noticed, and it was like, it's at this eddy, That's weird that it's happening here. Of like all places, some place that was energetically an eddy in some relevant way. And it like sat there. Like I made posts about it. That's funny. So these shallograms. Let's see if I can real quick find the one. This one. So I suggested that the current isn't just eddying in there, it's actually eddying in opposite directions, in like an internal eddy and an external eddy that's going around the internal eddy based on this one. That kind of like pushes the boundaries in both directions. So each side, the flow this way goes underneath here, but it also pushes this boundary. Where vice versa, this inner flow is actually off of like the rock itself and wrapping into a nucleus region, while this one is wrapping out from the nucleus region. Is kind of what I was thinking. Like ramping, literally flowing in here and then ramping, like running into resistance here, so going along certain paths, but especially here, ramping and then just spiraling at the chakras between them as like a nucleus current, while over here the other current wraps the other way, and in both instances they're pushed inward from the outside based on pressures, which then leads to this. Like if the pressure on one side was not able to resist this current, it would just go through that side. It wouldn't just like stop and eddy in the stone, but because the pressures are able to contain it, it eddies, but it also does so by going into two sides, and notably doing so where one of them is smaller than the other. This one is small, literally this whole like circle is like a eddy of current that's flowing into the stone. swirling in on both sides though, that then wrap around each other and interact inside, kind of thing, because the currents are being forced to be very like spine-like while they flow a lot of the time. So I guess it's like the pressures lead to a more like pixelated drilling current pressure like that can happen because only like a certain width can actually manage to push out the pressures to flow through. Even with all these high pressure currents flowing through, they can only push out the boundaries of the pressures around them so much. So it tends to like contain the currents to flow down channels that then literally flow in eddies. Oops. So I thought that was interesting. Where were we looking? Oh, we hadn't looked at it. That's right. We were looking at this. I was like, where was that? What the? We got world music on. Sorry if anything is less appealing. It's gonna go to some other region sooner or later. I just thought that was interesting. But they also had a hurricane there and it had a lot of damage. Acapulco here. It's kind of like at the boundary of this structure. If there's like here's a kind of maybe maybe like a nucleus like here to like a larger eddy structure that generally was here. But then over here, it's really at this margin, which is kind of like a Psi-Funkel position. Like if this is kind of more of even like an ammonite shape, then it's very much at a Psi-Funkel position. I don't know why that would matter particularly. I mean, I guess it just makes sense that the Earth would be shaped to encourage the energy there. Maybe I'm not sure if this is like just a natural terrain thing that may not have like presented itself. But they had two hurricanes I think in the last 2 years that were like, it's pretty bad. And I'm like, it's in this circle. Maybe it's related. Here's Asheville. It's also had a lot of damage. A lot of flooding out of the mountains from the rain from the hurricane. Oh, that's right, I was trying to find that post about the hurricane. Maracaibo with an eddy. So cool. And then I can't just pause here. This one I noticed part of its eddy, which is from this post. Part of its eddy is like physically related to the river or drainage systems off of the sides of the region. Like it's actually, there's a connection running over to it. So it's almost like this current flows in and leads to a flow in a certain region. This one flows in, and like this one flows in. Like, whoa. That's incredible. I mean, I don't know. just pardon me. Here we go. I forget what I was looking for. Oh yeah. Okay. This. So I noticed when the system was here. Sorry, I'm totally diverging. Whatever. Side tangenting, whatever. Going on some other path. Okay. But I noticed when this was here, the flows were going like this and like this, and doing this like colliding thing, and then there's flow going down here that was eddying here, but it was kind of just sitting there. And I thought it was like kind of in like this brace position, I thought. Again, and then flows down here, which I talked about some other episode. So I'll just kind of be brief. But then the storm, interestingly, like went up to, I think it literally went up to like right around here, like the eye. If there was an eye, like the central area, generally went to like the edge, and it was almost like some of it went west and it like divided it, where all this rain got kind of concentrated here because the storm like got divided by the Appalachians in some way. Maybe it like actually like decayed, like the storm's capacity to hold all of the water in the eddy that the hurricane was. Just kind of dissipated, so it just kind of dropped more rain because it like sliced it. And just the mere fact that it would even like energetically, like preferentially seem to go to that location is kind of interesting. Maybe even going up to, I don't know what the storm did after that particularly. Slow it down something longer. I don't know, just kind of thinking about it. But it was like running into the mountains here, which was limiting its size. It could have had a larger eddy, but the mountains really restricted it. As well as probably just the air there, but that air was probably generally being like held in a bowl between the Rockies and the Appalachians. That just kind of like tends to push storms like hurricanes off land beyond just that it has to like go upland. So it's like a resistance to its movement that way. It also has like a tendency to just have like more held air occupying the space, maybe? I don't know. Okay, but let's just talk about these posts, fuck it. So there's that current coming down the Rocky Mountain Trench that just kind of cuts through here is this white current. But then there's the main eddy center here that reaches down to the mantle. So, yeah. Oh. Here we go. That at least shows it, whatever. Good enough. I imagine we can find it. But this thing, at basically the northeast corner of Oregon. Here is actually a mantle, like, I believe it's high velocity. The waves move anomalously fast through, or vice versa, I don't remember. Whatever it is, it's like it's blue in the color, where it tends, blue is high, okay. So high velocity through. Which I've interpreted it as like a drainage system, or an upwelling location where an eddy is spiraling and the eddy's center is actually energetically reaching down to the mantle and into the mantle while the earth was expanding. So this was a very major eddy of ocean currents that the flood was, basically. As well as undercurrents, possibly, that were still happening, but like post-flood. I'm not completely sure how much is like actually global flood time of this all. Okay. So this I thought was interesting, just it's kind of some circles. So there's like actually structures in the terrain that we can see. Like beyond this one over here, we can see an actual boundary that pretty much cohesively wraps around. It kind of like breaks here, but then interestingly, there's another like polygon in that space. And then it continues around, and then it has like a nucleus type region even. Like, I don't know what to make of that exactly in terms of Idaho batholith related stuff. But it's right adjacent to it, which is right adjacent to Yellowstone. Which then, if we kind of like follow this path and maybe move up a little, like arc it where like it follows maybe even from here over here, 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 where there's like a row of them, and then even here a row of them that all go like starting at this boundary over this way. Kind of bending here more so though, I guess. It's almost like it straightens out here. Generally going to the nucleus over here, presumably. I believe I've already interpreted that. Not. This current goes this way. And then this current, I believe, goes this way. Like there's current going generally this way, that then goes this way. So this would go in opposite to it. So maybe it's going more underneath there. Like through the mouths. Across there. To interact with everything else. It's not like what is causing the eddy, it's just interacting with it in a direct way. In some way. I don't. But then there's the path to Yellowstone, and then over here are some other ones. So there's just a bunch of them. There's one over here at the Bonneville flood. Like, this one's really pronounced too. Like, I don't know about here, obviously. That's kind of whatever. But, like, if we follow this boundary over here, like, to here, there's like a river through here too. So 2 along this path, and then around this way, and then around here. There's a circle there. Just like the others, really. Big, maybe one here too. I don't know. That one's a little less circle. But like here, the nucleus type thing, and maybe some other, even almost looking like moons to a planetary system. And then another here that seems to, like, be overlain, so to speak. I don't think it's actually overlain, just like overwritten. Okay, so there's that. What did I say? Let me just read this. Pardon me. Not sure what all to make of this. Aqua is where a major eddy was in the Pacific Northwest. Let me just keep reading. Even though I already said this, let me just read it all in its entirety. That from what I can tell, drew basalt to the surface through the eddy's center, based on some like information that they said, and led to the Columbia River basalt eruption. From that location, especially, apparently, basing off of some details. Let's see. I didn't bother to timestamp it, so it's okay. It's from this video with Vic Camp. I'm not sure which image off the top of my head. Maybe here. I think he said the eruptions were from this area, like here and here, something, especially like something over there. That then means like this eddy center was upwelling basalt. So there's an eddy that is like suctioning earth up out of the mantle. Whoa. And then the eddy repositioned. So it was over here, but then it moves. But mind you, over here it was like deeply connected to the mantle, but then it starts moving. Maybe it's not quite as connected. It went around the massive mound, so this is part of the like realization I was having. Like, there's this huge mound here that's causing resistance, and there's an eddy here that's getting like pushed by other currents, but it can't move because it's like, maybe it's like a brace, like one of the brace currents, like the, as I just depicted for this, like some other eddy, the Ontong Java Plateau type eddy maybe is happening, like down here and up here. is this brace that is kind of held in position. I don't know. But it's generally unable to move until it can get around the Idaho batholith. So it basically takes enough energy to kind of move it past, but then because it's literally getting shoved into this energy, into the pressures northward. Really reminiscent of some of those shallograms again. The details in these are pretty curious, but this one, sorry guys, I don't know why it won't stop. It won't stop. Sorry, not the most becoming, maybe. Oh wow, I love listening to him. The dude needs to stop the thing that's making the thing happen. That shit is like, it's fucking irritating. You know what you're doing. You know the cost. And you let us all deal with it, you son. But so I was talking about how this Eddie in the Shalogram episode 15 like couldn't get into the main Eddie's space, but it was like getting pushed by other currents in to the point where it formed an eddy, basically. Like it probably was generally forming like a tropical depression kind of thing. But the currents pushed it, compressed it, but held it so that it, and then had to eddy in that space and push out the boundaries due to being held against resistance, though. So my thoughts is this eddy is being pushed into other eddies down here. The Bonneville Flood Eddy, the Colorado Plateau Eddy, this eddy, like a bunch of eddies that maybe are not formed simultaneously, but generally the energy is at least approximately there, where like the interaction of it all is like then that eddy, then this eddy, like, but like it's all interacting with the pressures generally manifesting as these eddies. So it has to get around, and as soon as it gets around the batholith, though, the point is it moves back to the energy level it is over here. Because this current is pushing into it, so it's like getting squeezed down, and then goes this way. I wonder if it... I think the... I believe the Yellowstone hotspot track actually goes slower, and then it goes faster, which is also in this video. And even, interestingly, it goes slower... yeah, 30 to 20, 40 to 30, so it goes relatively fast across here. And then 30 to 20 is much slower. And then 20 to 10 is much faster. How exactly like this spot is moving this around the batholith and like inducing something that's down here, I know there's counterclockwise rotation. So, like, as it moves this way, maybe... I know they've, like, mapped it out. I don't know if they've, like, directly related the seismic thing going on here with, like, the Yellowstone hotspot track in the way that I'm doing, kinda. I'm pretty sure they do, but I'm not completely. Pardon me. Let's keep going, because that's what we do. Eddy repositioned. It went around the massive amount of material that blocked its motions. Okay. Current propagating between Antarctica and Australia deflected along the western margin, so maybe... hopefully it's in here at this point. Oh, I didn't save them. I made so many. That's good enough. This current going this way goes up to Baja California in the top North America, in like the western accreting region, as well as west of North America, to flow up this way, as well as like past this current, but up this way as well as up this way, probably. Now that I think about it, since it's probably just doing it like interlocking fingers kind of thing, like we saw with the Shalogram, and then down here, and then up, maybe like down, up. I do have up here, down here, up here, down here, up here, down. It is pretty substantially doing that. And then over here, just the eddy itself going down, up, down, up, down, up. So these both are up next to each other. Might be a down squeezed in there somewhere. But this flow is propagating into it from Antarctica. And what I'm thinking, around 20 million began to cross onto the continent more. So, like that, it was over here at one time, and then it starts to go over and over, and then it like cuts in here. And creates the San Andreas Fault, I believe, is also at that time frame. But then, like, actually gets in. And then push the boundary of its interaction south. Began to cross onto the continent more, shifting eastward, and push the boundary of its interaction with the southward propagating current, which is like throughout the process they're interacting, like they're almost like sliding sideways, but like running into each other to maybe like bend in that way, kind of thing. Push the boundary of its interaction with it from the North Pole region. To do this, their balance point had to go around the resistance of that pesky Idaho batholith. And as it did this, it got lodged into a corner it could not escape. So it moved around, but then it moves over here, and it can't get closer because it's flowing to the Hudson Bay eddy center. So there's an eddy over here that then moves over and like is going this way to Hudson Bay, but Hudson Bay is pushing outward, so then it gets stuck there, and the eddy gets lodged in this location, which maybe dissipates it even in a similar way by it going atop the mountains. It gets like cut apart. If it was atop and not below. I believe it was throughout while the like Missoula flood, the Bonneville flood, and things are happening. This is happening. Okay. Pressures from all sides were holding the center of the eddy at modern-day Yellowstone. To the northeast was Hudson Bay's eddy center. To the east, Bighorn Mountain. So this is just this mass holding the region here, so it couldn't like move off this way towards the Great Lakes eddy center. So the Great Lakes, they're the Bighorn Mountain with its vast magnetic anomaly nucleus. So that is like this. Is Bighorn in this as a nucleus of this huge structure here. And this is like the Yellowstone hotspot track, actually. Let's check out this other image, this other animation for that. And here's Bighorn. So Yellowstone hotspot tracks definitely is related to this. Like, no question related to there. We also recently, that's right, that's reminding me. They like the unfolding finger idea, where the current went in here and like wrapped back, and then wrapped back, and wrapped back, and wrapped back, and kind of like extended out until it actually reached Yellowstone and was like pointing towards Hudson Bay. At which point, and like, that was the end of the process, I guess. Relatively. It's approaching present, so things stabilized. And to the north, south, and west were all the currents pushing this eddy against the continent onto it in the first place. So there's an eastward propagating current, there's southward, and there's northward. So all these currents are just holding it there, and then the Hudson Bay and Great Lakes are holding it there. So then it's held, it can't really move, and it just influences the local terrain in that location more than if it was just passing by. Also is an element of what's happening. Given the eddy center reaches to the mantle over here, then it means the eddy was at least below the surface. And since the evidence, such as this image, is surface-based, and there is substantial flood evidence in the region in general, it is clearly a process that was occurring throughout the totality of the crust atop it and into the mantle. Crust, mantle, and atop it, like water-based currents that are interacting throughout all those layers. This kind of looks like a mantis, a praying mantis. The little mouth. Since the evidence, okay, I said that. Okay, let's look at this. So this is part of what oh, maybe I didn't actually show that yet. It might be part of this thread. Did I already talk about this thread? Like, did I? No, there's no way. There's no way I talked about this thread. Maybe I didn't talk about the finger unfolding thing yet. Something of this nature, I believe, was happening here, where that current going northward along... I don't have the image open anymore, but whatever. Going along this way runs into current going eastward from the Philippines, is what I was thinking, along this boundary. Let's see if I show any images. No. I think I already kind of explained that, but in case I didn't particularly, we can actually just kind of follow it, like right here, across here, and then it bends like this way, down towards Ontong Java and towards the like focal point of energy over here. But if we just like take a straight path across, it really goes to like the Philippines. Like across this region. From here, across this way, across to like there. So like this region is opposite here. So what I was essentially suggesting is current up here. This boundary is a boundary of current that is flowing this way and running into North America and going up this way and coming, initially going from here and like initially going in a different path, but essentially open as the Pacific opens, it goes across this way and then around, and then essentially follows this boundary across here to go back to the Philippines region now, rather than other pressures like squeezing over this way to go down this way, and this other current coming across this way, filling this area, kind of just like separate the current. So it's not one huge eddy, it's actually got this region up here that's just kind of going back and forth and expanding out the earth across that stretch, where a portion of the current is flowing into the Pacific Northwest, directly in, probably relating to some flat slab subduction details and other things. But the point is that current seems to have actually like interacted with the northward propagating current at this region to actually divide like the Angel's Trident here, having like a single center thing and then like branches off. So it's doing something of this nature on a much smaller scale right here, where this current's running into a cross current, and it's basically vibrating the current out so much so that it fans out underneath the inflowing current from the Philippines, so it goes underneath it, which then cuts into the earth, leading to these channels in its direction of flow, which then are like the thing, and I believe like we even see like the way this arcs, it's so much like the area that was where like it's so much like this in shape, specifically the up down aspects, not so much the sideways, but the sideways would be more just like current flows related to like this, like how it has these lines here, this flows going more this way. But then they get squeezed in, it seems. Like they kind of actually go preferentially down underneath this and go over this way, is kind of what I was thinking. so that they then come in like within some region where they then wrap around and off of North America. But when they do that, they then run into that northward propagating current and push it sideways. As well as other currents are probably flowing off of North America, like generally like this way, to go across there. Some flow in this region is happening. Something like that is at play. Maybe even here. Somewhere, current is probably cutting off of other, specifically at a more linear path. That's not just like arcing back and that's it. Leading to this, and then it gets through though, and current like pushes things under and leads to all of the like subduction related stuff, but it also seems to have gone to the Hudson Bay. Like it was basically trying to get to the Hudson Bay, like that one image we had. So maybe I should open that. Hopefully my power doesn't go out. It's raining pretty hard now. This one. So this current is trying to go to Hudson Bay. And this, when Wrangellia gets docked there, it kind of blocks the path, and this other current that then gets more bent, like it was going this way, but it got bent by this blocking it to then like redirect into this and go off of it like that. And in so doing, that current actually cut over here to kind of block this path, so it couldn't like just go this way. So instead it went this way to go basically over to here. Well, two over here, but then this other crossing current started to become more dominant. I guess initially this was just dominant, so it didn't matter that there was crossing currents. But around 20 million, maybe, this current from the Philippines started to get more energetic, so then it came across more, leading to the details then, is probably what I would suspect. Just, I don't want to put too much weight in that, but just like a... But then it still made it to Hudson Bay by cutting across here. Going through here, cross, over, cross, and then up and in here. I know it sounds kind of ridiculous that it's like going up and onto, like, onto. And then to Hudson Bay as some kind of like returning current of like a huge scale, because that's how ammonites form, is eddies that are flowing in eddies. So like an eddy that's swirling, but then where the current itself is an eddy that's swirling. As it propagates, it swirls in an eddy. And then around that branches off like exit path currents, exhausting the excess current as these rib channels that both leave and flow back though, because they're like pushed back in. It's kind of like solar flares or whatever. And they return to their source. So like literally this Hudson Bay eddy seems to have had a returning current going back, essentially. Wow, the path, this went to the Philippines and interacted like that. Okay, let's keep going. Here's this. Again, here's me just drawing some of the lines, especially the way it goes abruptly over and up, over, up, over, up. Like it's really doing the thing. This main like divot at the center. very much like this thing. Maybe not the best image to have chosen at the time. I couldn't get this website to load. I guess they were doing some maintenance. And then, again from this video, here we go, the Atticite belt here, which is 30 to 20 million about. So my thought was that current goes across and goes in, but then this 30 to 20 million, it like actually influences this region. Instead of wrapping around, it actually cuts in and interacts here, leading to this Atticite belt somehow. I haven't really like deciphered exactly how that could be, but like it seems to be related. And then larger scale current, then this is what I was getting at with the finger unrolling, where this current comes across and then it unrolls, where then it goes up this way, is what I was kind of thinking. Like that, and then it unrolls further to like this boundary. And when it gets to this boundary, it then goes partly this way and partly this way to go basically that way and this way and whatever else, and divides there, and then continues though, and then it straightens out more to go more at the Yellowstone hotspot location of modern times, or not Yellowstone, I guess. And then this eddy is going on over here, so this is what I was thinking. And even though these currents are flowing to the eddy, like they're boom right at it kind of currents, they can't make it to it without going parallel as like conduit channels that are held by this other current that's flowing in the opposite direction, but like with enough current to push that current aside, just enough for some current to flow, so it flows through, pushes the surrounding opposite flowing waters, like literally bends with it, like immediately enters the eddy space here and just bends opposite to it and flows opposite to it to then go towards the nucleus. Or at least like partially like ride the track of the like railroad track of the eddy to along its route wherever it's actually going. Maybe it doesn't actually go to the eddy, it's just going like in the pressures until it gets like zeroed in on, focused in eddy, and like all the pressures are like pointing it at an eddy, so it's out, and then it goes into that eddy, but then it gets like pressures like push it against the grain to go against the grain and find a channel against the grain, really. Then I just kind of boxed this in just to show this. Oh, fuck. Oh, man. Hope you didn't delete this channel or anything. Okay. Well, damn. Well, these were from there. I don't know if I want to show them, but so be it. They were from that video. We got some yeah, shit. This is, I don't know, but this ammonite is from Texas. They found. That just kind of reminds me of the shape. That's why I was like. Talk about all this stuff, and then I watched this video and it's like, that looks a lot like like generally here, like the way this has this little tab at the base of the ammonite, kind of with mountains over here, holding its shape. Kind of reminded me of this. And then interestingly, notice there's like an inlet channel here where it's eroded through here, because that's how it goes. And then down here, the ammonite like kind of fades out and ends here where these things start, but really they start over here, which is awesome. Like we really see the chambers no longer like cohesively being able to be chambers, and they start to take like whatever these things are, shapes, like giving birth to new systems that we saw in some other ammonites he found. Like this one, it's got an actual ammonite chunk here. Like where does this ammonite even end? Does it end like here, past this? Because like it clearly something's going on past it. So like, is this in it? But like, what about over here? Because this is, I don't know. Maybe sorry. This is wrong to talk about. It looks like it's a down post now. We got this storm power's gonna go out. Like, well, try to tell you not to talk about those ammonites. They're a little too revealing. Maybe just you didn't want them. You don't want to share it anymore. I don't know. I don't feel bad if they're taken down. They're just so incredible. Just kind of scroll through. I'd like this boundary here. It's so incredible. Like that's too like perfect to just be randomly happening. I don't know if you guys hear that. We got a storm. The striations. See my Shalagram episode from yesterday, Shalagram Zone, episode 15 for more info on striations. It's kind of interesting what was there. There's other stuff going on, but I really like those striations. They're probably just ignored and like attributed to the shell in some way, and that's that. When they're seen in them. This thing is incredible. And a little abnormally shaped here. Just eroded down, I guess, but still. Would be like the typical paradigm interpretation. Little nubs exposed in there. Then there's this under UV light. This is, oh my god. It really looks like a galaxy. Like the cosmos, like looking out in space. Incredible. It's got like a little bend here that I don't think should be there. I don't know. Looks a little too like the unfolding finger thing we were just looking at. The matrix in this section takes the typical wave shape. So notice we've got a boundary here that then down here goes down, up, like out, in, So I got a far point, in, out, in. Far point, in, out, and then doing it like this way too. Like that kind of thing going on along the boundary, like this way, I guess, or something. This one's maybe not the best shallogram example. Why can I not go back? Oh, maybe. Oh, that's why, because I was showing this one. This wasn't the best either, but yeah, this one just like broken. More like this. Then from another video he posted, here's like a clear eddy center. You can even see like a boundary here going across. And then this looks like just nothing, but at the same time, I saw this. I don't see it. Okay, it's starting from this one, like wrapping around it here, and then I guess I drew it like that. I don't know. Maybe not the best example. This one, all right. That's a huge ammonite. That's incredible. It's got some kind of nucleus thing, like a end of the ammonite over. Like that's huge. This is a huge ammonite. It looks a little weird over here, but like that boundary, just like we were just looking at the other one. Kind of see some ribs in there. And then, quoting him, looking like it's just mud. Yeah, I don't know, false alarm, it's just mud. It's just mud and has those little ripples like an ammonite. Oh, unfortunately the video is not available, I guess. Whole reason why I came out here was to get that supposedly a fossil right there, but it turns out to just be mud. I feel weird like using his video and quoting him. Sorry, I don't even know. What? Don't remember your first name. Oh, if I ever knew it. Unless it's Ivins. Diamond Miner. Ivins. I might be saying that wrong too, sorry. Given he has, but the point is, given he has years of doing this, like, he finds all these incredible ammonites. It's not, like, it's not surprising. Like, I'm sure anyone watching that, without, like, their defenses up, oh, I know he's tricking me. I know he's tricking. I know he's got something up his sleeve. He's about to be like, this ain't no ammonite. See, boom. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I was prepared though. I was mentally prepared. He was gonna see. Ain't no ammonite. Ain't no ammonite. He just so too bad. So I was saying, there's some eddy centers in in the western region of North America that are evident. So we have that one over there. We have the Bonneville Flood one here. And then we have the Colorado Plateau eddy center here. 3 in a row. Generally bounded along this line. Just kind of odd. Kind of odd. Maybe even there. Maybe. Maybe there too. And more subtly though. If that one, this one looks a little more pronounced just by like having that. So the row of eddy centers goes basically to where North America used to attach to South America near the Gulf of Guaycol. Guaycol? I don't know how to say it. Used basically here. Goes to here, which used to attach to over here. And the reason I described it that way is because a current was flowing from here into there. And very high energy current was flowing there along that boundary, so that this points generally over there to like right there. And then along its track isn't just these, but also like something going on there, something going on here, something there, and then maybe something other stuff that I don't know if I drew, but here too maybe. But again, like having this track, which is very reminiscent of like this, like a track that then has a bunch of eddy centers that were forming along it to like cut the earth apart. This I feel like is kind of what a good example of how like the mechanic can play out, but not like substantially enough that it did, just like so we can see it kind of thing, of how this was happening, just way larger scale and not enough to actually cut the earth apart by the other energies, like of other pressures out here that were pushing into it, so it couldn't actually push the continent apart by the eddies, but it tried to cut it apart. It just in this type of manner, but it only managed to basically shape it to have like the eddy centers imprinted along that path. So let's keep going and seeing what else this path leads us to, I guess, right? So then generally like pressure over here. This one is where I'm relating it to the Appalachians pressure, south of the Appalachians, and then where the Appalachians are more so experiencing west or eastward current from the Hudson Bay eddy. So like off of this boundary, generally going over here, along here, and generally to like over here to hold a pressure. Like along this boundary to here. So there's just a flow of the Hudson Bay eddy running into over here. And another pressure of another current flowing westward that then are squeezing the Appalachian region in general, and then leading to currents flowing westward being prevented except for south of there, which then go across here, like right south across, immediately leading to actual like effects at the boundary that then run into the Colorado Plateau and feel like a current feels here, feels an eddy here. So that's part of what's going on here. Is it going in to these other pressures and eddying? So maybe there's another one going in this way, another one in like back and forth kind of thing again in some way. I don't think that's happening necessarily, but be interesting. Maybe it can happen. So then if we follow it the other way, we actually see like an eddy center here, something going on there, and then like along here there's actually some circular things. So like here's one. There's also something going on there, but I don't know if I circled that. And then here's one. That, like the other thing has some portion of it that's not like fully cohesive, and then something going on here that I think I pictured more like this, like a nucleus here, like a larger, and maybe even like this with like 2 nuclei. I don't know. That's kind of interesting. This looks like it spirals in there. But then, like, continuing this path through, I believe it's called the Coastal Mountain Batholith or something. Where might it be? Do I have an Alaska? Yes. Coast Mountains, possibly Batholith. For some reason I feel like Batholith is in the name also. That shows my like awareness of the details of there. But then, ta-da! What do we see when we keep following this path? This pressure point. A little odd. Now we're getting somewhere. Like what in the... We got a pressure point over here where that current's flowing in like this into this pressure point, and then this way, is this just chain? Like it has all these eddy centers along it, seemingly. And then I said, well, what if we keep going? So we go through there, and admittedly it's a little hard to make this like equal along the path, but it generally goes to over here. And I even pondered, maybe these circles, these nuclei aren't like quite the same radius and relate to some kind of narrower original current flow that actually is getting pinched through here. I'm not sure. I put question marks. Like somewhere the current, I've interpreted it's going through here. Maybe it's going through here as well. Just being divided by the source coming this way and going up, whereas this is going from Antarctica region. And then this is coming from like Mediterranean, so like they are divided in some way, but generally pinching through here for some reason to go across this way as like a narrow interaction of the current cutting through all the pressures of like probably that there's an eddy wrapping generally around here holding pressure so that some other current going back the other way has to like do so along its boundary over here, but then just interacts across that way. Colorado Plateau. Then I wondered if the Indonesian archipelago was related as a cycling of the current, perhaps in a similar way to the Philippines, where the Philippines seem related to like this upper region. So if we follow here over, we really get to the right here, which is interesting. The beginning of the arc of the Indonesian archipelago is basically along this path that we follow here. And then from there along here, it's maybe not the most linear path, but it is structurally a path. Like there's a boundary here, there's a boundary here, boundary here, there's maybe some boundaries in here. I might be just kind of extending it through there without like a hard boundary. Like generally the Ontong Java Plateau would have maybe extended like some influence of this area here, and then there's an eddy here, so maybe it's kind of going through there, over there. So along that boundary, it goes to, let's just read this. It does seem plausible that this shape is generally related to the archipelago in terms of the region that is most pronounced with activities. Like, this region has more of what's going on of that nature than down here. Like the Rockies kind of die off. So it strongly suggests the like pressures against the Indonesian archipelago as the Earth was expanding was like backstopped by the Rockies over here, in essence, by this cycling of the current between the two. And then Vic Camp says Adakite erupted from 20 to 30 million years. And in addition to Adakite, all throughout this portion of what we refer to as the back arc area of the Cascades is an area of high potassium calc-alkaline volcanism, which indicates it is a very similar source to the Cascades themselves, hydrated mantle source. And then there was a hiatus of about 3 to 5 million years, and then began the Columbia River basalts that erupted from a dry mantle source, one being wet, the other being very dry, with a hiatus in between, so that has to be explained. I haven't really thought about this. It's possible it points to some, like, heat evaporation process that dried out the region and was more of like a heat eddy almost. I don't know, like an ethereal eddy that just even stripped the waters, so the more basic current flow was driving the eddies in the region at that time. I don't know. Don't know what to make of that. Although it may also tie into like the end of some aspects of the flood where it's starting to like be able to dry out by the heating and in part, but also just drying out. But like also by the heating doing it in part. Okay. In part. Let's skip this one, maybe. Yeah. Do we even do this one? 120. This one's probably worth giving a little more attention than I'd give it at this point. So maybe I can do this one, because this one I might not really go into yet, because I kind of gotta look at the paper more. I described it as OMFG, jaw-dropping evidence, from Humphreys et al. So notice here's Bighorn Mountain, right to the left of the main, like, what is this? I don't even remember. Shatsky conjugate, or TAMU. Shirshov, I guess, I believe a TAMU conjugate of the TAMU massif of the Shatsky rise. Specifically with some other conjugates from the area, one of which is the Papanin tail of the Shatsky conjugate. So here, I guess, I don't know what the purple is. That must be Sierra Nevada and just Batholiths, I guess. Apparently this closes from 85 to 60. It's like it opened from the Hawaiian Sphere going through, and then once the Hawaiian Sphere went north, then it pushed it back closed. That's my take on what I see by those numbers. I don't know if that, or if that's just kind of not pushing close, but that's actually a propagation of whatever's going on here in the red. It's probably actually what's going on here. Disrupting Mojave crust and propagating the 85 to 60 million emplacement of Pelona type schists. Okay. So it's not closing it, but maybe it's like putting new pressures on that area. Kind of makes me think though that the sphere went through here. Because somehow it gets to the Idaho shear zone, western Idaho shear zone, and causes the bend at Orofino. But how exactly it gets there, I don't know. It seems like it might have gone in through here though. Started reading this paper, lots of things of interest, not acquainted enough with much of the subject matter to fully grasp a nuance of meaning of several points made, so hopefully it makes more sense throughout the paper. Things that especially grab my attention. Shatsky conjugate's subductive interaction with North America began 90 million and progressed specifically to the Colorado Plateau and then specifically to Wyoming. And I say Bighorn Mountain region because that's where it did go, to the Bighorn Mountain region of all places. It's getting a little anomalous. These are major points in, like we literally just were talking about, like Colorado Plateau and Bighorn, which both came up in these eddy centers. And then this Shatsky conjugate went specifically to the Colorado Plateau and then specifically to Wyoming. That's right, it was on this post. Let me find it here. The emplacement of the Rand schist. The cooling, hydration, evidence includes blah 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 blah. The emplacement of the Rand schist, the cooling, hydration, and erosional basal Colorado Plateau and Colorado Mantle lithosphere, the creation of Rocky Mountain faulting by the forced northeast motion of the Colorado Plateau, and the replacement of Wyoming mantle lithosphere. Or that's not actually what I thought it was, I don't think. Is it in here? I can't text search. Let's see. Removal. Oh yeah, here we go. Began subducting beneath Southern California, 90 million. Progressed from Southern California, so first up, to Colorado Plateau. And then within the mantle under basal North America to arrive under Wyoming at approximately 70 million. Mind you, the KT boundary is when Bighorn Mountain uplifted, just about, like, at that time. Approximately the KT boundary, which is a major time in Earth's history, not just the Chicxulub impact crater, or crater. Impact. Which is that in this line? No. I was just thinking maybe it was in this line. Maybe it's in another line though. I don't know. Yeah. Cooling, hydration, and erosion of basal Colorado Plateau and Colorado Mantle lithosphere sure sounds a lot like flood aspects at work. And specifically, like there was a major element of the Colorado Plateau where the eddy of these waters was below the surface. Forced northeast motion of the Colorado Plateau and creating Rocky Mountain faulting. This northeast motion must be related to currents propagating northward to the Pacific Northwest, passing to the west of the Colorado Plateau, and perhaps to pressures from the Trident current, which is this thing that then branched off into this area, put pressures up there. The Trident's current fracture zones pushing into North America at pressure points. Oh yeah, and it also, that's right, it went like this, but then it bends. So initially it was going northward there, but then it bends here as the Earth expanded. Like this was happening over there. From here, which was over here, which was all the way at the location we were just looking at over there, which then was sending currents up this way, and then it's spaced apart so that then the current actually turned over this way and went this way and ran into North America instead in pressure points though. So that's what I was getting at here. The northeast motion of basically that there's currents flowing these ways, applying pressures into North America, particularly like here, so that this Colorado Plateau region is being pushed northeast and kind of wedged in there more. And then the introduction definitely helps inform on the topic in general. In a sense, this paper aims to consider the compatibility of various Baja BC and flat slab subduction interpretations based on the insular superterrane, which is relevant for Baja BC and Shatsky conjugate. And the Shatsky conjugate is specifically a focus of flat slab subduction hypotheses and is not given as much like focus in Baja BC models, although this is a Baja BC related model and they certainly talk about it. It's just more of a talking point of flat slab subduction, it seems. But some takeaways, likely something associated. I feel like something associated with Shatsky rise as a conjugate component did pass through the region of North America during the general timeframes described and documented in literature. Its location and the location of the insular superterrane, as per paleomagnetic data, are, in the least, difficult to reconcile in the modern paradigm. So they're basically, if I open this paper now, they're basically trying to determine, can the insular superterrane be moving northward this way as the Shatsky conjugate is subducting under North America? And then looking at the actual timing, because it's very close, and they're like, can these things, like, what's going on here? Trying to figure out, like, how did this insular superterrane not interact with this Shatsky conjugate thing? Kind of thing is happening. And I believe they come to the conclusion, though, that it would have generally been in a very similar location. Let me see if I can actually find them saying it and me not just speaking. There's much about the history of Southern California and the insular superterrain that is interesting and confusing. With our paper, the goal is to establish a convincing Shatsky conjugate subduction story. In the following summary, we focus on California because it is there that the main objections to Shatsky conjugate subduction are raised. We posit that Shatsky conjugate was a large igneous province within the Farallon plate that began subducting. Maybe it's better to read the intro, which actually describes the things probably. Paleomagnetic evidence, yeah, so 2,500 kilometers of post-mid-Cretaceous northward transport of the insular superterrain, as giving rise to the Baja BC hypothesis based on paleomagnetic data, suggesting that this terrain that we've looked at in, like, for instance here, this here moved 2,500 miles in this, or kilometers in this current actually, as I propose, and docked 100 million years here by getting shoved up against the resistance of North America in the currents of it all. Soon thereafter, Dickinson and Snyder proposed flat slab subduction to explain the late Cretaceous Eocene magmatic and tectonic record in the western U.S. interior, and Lavicari proposed the subduction of an oceanic plateau beneath southern California as the cause of flat slab subduction and the Laramide orogeny. So they're like, why is this slab so flat? I mean, why are these Rockies here? Well, it must be a flat slab subduction. Why is the flat slab subduction happening? It must be some conjugate, is basically the kind of like line of reasoning, and thus it is interpreted to be the Shatsky conjugate for other reasons that I'm not quite sure. Okay, since then, evidence for both flat slab subduction and northward insular superterrain transport has strengthened, so that's interesting. Evidence for both things has increased. Now, flat slab subduction is now commonly thought to have been controlled by the subduction of this Shatsky conjugate large igneous province beneath southern California, with its arrival at the trench estimated at approximately 90 million years. Paleomagnetic and paleontologic data suggest the southernmost insular terrain was near the latitude of southernmost California and northern Baja California at 90 million years, but significantly further north by 80 to 65 million, although paleo-longitudes are unconstrained. The paleo-latitude of the approximately 90 million samples appears to present a situation where the southernmost insular terrain and Shatsky conjugate locations will spatially overlap at 90 million. Fascinating. This could potentially exclude the flat slab hypothesis because it implies the Shatsky conjugate subducted under the insular terrain and not the North American plate near the Mojave. In this paper, we investigate whether these two hypotheses are necessarily contradictory. Okay, so that's that. I probably should read the paper. It's definitely excellent, profound probably, in lots of its details. Alright, guys. Till next one. See you guys. Peace out.